Facepalm America. I'm Beowulf Rockland, facepalmamerica.com. You know the drill. It's a place where you can go and check out the other episodes of the show. And, connect with us and go on Twitter, not calling it the other thing, Facebook, and find out more of what this show is all about. It's that time again, that time of the week where we speak with Susanne Posel, the host of This Week Again, a tongue-in-cheek encapsulation of the events of the week from a progressive perspective. Susanne, how's it going?
It's going great. How about you?
Really well, really well. Although, it's interesting because you and I were talking last week about how ourselves as members of the Generation X, as they call it, as the kids call it today, are struggling as a whole financially. And my goodness, members of the millennial generation and younger on down the line are struggling even more than we. And lo and behold, there's this little article from Newsweek talking about how an uptick in bankruptcy assistance among Generation X and millennials signals a burgeoning debt crisis, overshadowing recent economic optimism. And I think to myself, it's amazing what we are experiencing in our real lives is actually being reflected back to us in the media. That seems like so rare a thing, and I was so happy to see that. I mean, it's horrible news.
Yeah,
but I was happy to say, oh wow, that's actually being reported and commented on, and I thought that was a good thing.
That is a good thing, And I understand we're in an election year now, so we got to talk about the economy. And I love watching when I have to watch Fox, not a news channel. They begrudgingly and with the most monotone they can muster, yes, they report on what is going on with the economy. But what they're reporting on is the stock market, which you and me and most Americans are not part of.
Yeah. And
yes, inflation is down. Okay, to be honest, I went and filled up my tank the other day, and it was $3 and change instead of $5 and change. That was awesome. Yeah. But I was doing that on my way to a grocery pickup, and the place where I frequent, and I won't tell you who that is. I don't want to mention any names, but they are slowly raising their prices. And I've been doing this for so long since the pandemic. I kind of like it because I don't have to go in and look at you. I just get my stuff and leave.
Exactly. Why would you go into a store and expose yourself to the germs of people, especially post-COVID? And, just
yeah, buffets are off limits for me. I'll never go back to a buffet.
I love buffets. I hate to say it. And it's difficult for me. I have not been to a whole lot since this whole thing.
I won't judge your lifestyle. It's okay.
But I'm with you. It is so much easier and so much more convenient to stay in the car. I can't tell you the number of times over the past couple of years that especially my daughter and she has gotten into going to one particular establishment, and we stay out there, and they bring the stuff over to us, and it's wonderful. And I have no problem with that at all. I would rather not get out, especially if it's raining or there's an ice storm, as has been the case in many parts of Oregon as of late. We haven't get hit too hard ourselves.
A run on Stanley Cups,
on Stanley Cups. Oh my goodness, the Stanley Cup! I still can't disassociate from hockey, but it's another one of those things like Crocs or Pogs or what have you.
The funny thing about Crocs is the name of the movie is escaping me, but they were actually created for a movie.
Yeah,
to be part of the costume design, and the movie did so well that they became a thing.
I didn't know that. Okay, that's interesting. Wow. Okay.
Back to what we were saying. I noticed that the grocery place where I frequent, their prices are going up. Mm-hmm. And yes, we're seeing inflation go down. According to the Biden administration, it's 3.1%. Mm-hmm. But what we're seeing is the prices aren't going down. So that tells me right there, we've got greedflation, which is what
Absolutely.
you and I and everyone else has been crying.
Yes.
And that might be part of the reason, the living expenses
Yeah.
for people forget Gen X. My generation, we did what our parents told us to do. We went to college. We got a good job. We worked really hard. We worked long hours. We worked through all of the BS that goes along with that job. And in 2008, our houses were taken from us.
Yeah.
And since then, I'm a young Gen X. I'm almost a millennial.
Yeah.
So I have no prospect. Where the older Gen X were able to get in there, they were about, maybe 10 years older than me. So they had that time advantage. But after 2008, there's no prospect for a younger Gen X to get a house. And now I'm having trouble paying my living expenses. What can I expect from a millennial or a Gen Z or an alpha?
Yeah.
There's just no hope.
Yeah, no, it's getting worse and worse. And I am old enough to remember back in the day when they used to call greedflation price gouging.
Yeah.
Just jacking up the prices and making as much as you possibly could because they could get away with it, and no one was really going to do anything about it. And that's the problem. There are not enough forces, frankly, not enough regulators in place in order to make sure that they don't do that. And it just happens all the time. It's got nothing to do. And they love these cover stories. They love to talk about, the war in Ukraine is disrupting that, or what's going on in the Red Sea is disrupting this, and we got to raise our prices. But then when you bear down on it, and you look at how much their prices actually need to be raised, how much their costs go up, it is a fraction of the amount that they actually raise their prices. They deliberately use whatever global events they can as cover for raising their prices, and then they raise them as quickly as they can, as high as they can, and then they bring them back down a little bit, but as slowly as they can and not as much as they should be doing. So they're
because they want you to get used to paying a higher price, just maybe not so much. And that's how they incrementally get us used to prices going up. And then when we say things like, oh, well, prices go up because it used to be cheaper back then, but whatever. No, that's wrong. I understand that if you are getting your materials from another country and you have to order it and it takes 6 to 8 weeks to get there, you're buying in bulk and you're deciding what your price for your item is based on all of these little things that you have to purchase in order to make that item. I get that. I totally get that those prices go up. I get that. But what I'm talking about and what you're talking about is 40%, 30 to 40% higher grocery cost.
Yeah.
That's not incremental. That's not get used to 50 cents more a year. That's not. And that's over the last 3 years, going on 4 years.
Yeah. And do you think that our wages have gone up anywhere near that amount, or
we haven't seen a wage increase in 15 years?
Exactly. Which means that between those percentages, the 0% of wage increase and the 30 to 40% increase in basic, consumer costs, that's where we get caught. Between those two forces, we get crushed by these two huge economic forces, and this is what not enough people are paying attention to. Yeah, it's great that employment is going up. Great. Everybody has 3 jobs instead of 2 now. That's fantastic. But they're each individually not paying as much, and it's just amazing the numbers game that they play with this. And they still, even though I am not happy with the way that Biden has handled this, frankly, I still have to sympathize with him because I know that big companies are getting ready as spring and summer comes on and we get closer to the election to jack up prices to exaggerate the effect, even worse than it is to say that Biden is responsible for this. He's not. He's not responsible for it. I mean, I believe he should be doing more to counteract it, and I believe he has that power if he would act on it. But he is not responsible for what's happening here, which is basically these companies are screwing everybody over. They're padding their massive corporate bank accounts. They're adding a few extra feet onto their super yachts, and into the deal, they try to blame Biden directly for it, and that's complete nonsense.
It absolutely is. And that's evidence in the fact that we've seen this rise exorbitantly in such a small time period. So that's not incremental
Right.
Prices rise every year, cost of business,
Yeah.
And the other thing is the companies are now getting out of paying higher wages for educated employees.
Mm-hmm.
They are now taking off masters, bachelors, any college education off of their job descriptions.
Yeah.
So they can pay you less.
Right.
And what about the people who do have that? Now it's useless. And I don't know. Let's move on to the massive layoffs that have been happening because, we overhired during COVID. Okay. Well, how am I going to afford the expensive groceries and my rent? This is driving me nuts. And this is something we all need to think about this. Even if you own, it still has implications on your mortgage rates. We need a national cap on rental properties.
Absolutely.
Not just, getting the banks and the investors out of it is a separate issue to me. Yes, we need to do that. But right now, to stop the bleeding, to add a tourniquet, we need a national cap. Now, I think it should be based on your county and what your average is, because to be honest, average salaries for middle class right now are like 60, 70, maybe 80 grand a year. And you have to make at least 100,000 to qualify for a $400,000 loan. But if you have any debts, you have to make an excess of 120. There's no way you're going to get to that. I don't care how many side hustles you have.
Yeah.
So if we put a cap on rent, then we can start the process of affordable housing, and the amount of unhoused will lower.
Yeah, exactly. National rent control is a thing that I am very, very much in favor of. And it's really interesting to see, even in supposedly like liberal California, where I was, visiting my parents not too long ago. They've put this thing in place that that has quote unquote controls, but it has all sorts of loopholes because even liberal California, with the Democrats in charge and with a supermajority in the state legislature, is basically still in the pocket of the real estate industry, and they have no intention of changing that in any substantive way. I am very much in favor of making that happen. And even in the state of Oregon, they have a slightly better rent control, but you still get to raise your prices by like 10% like every year. It's insane.
And that is just nuts. That'll break a family. That will break them.
Yeah.
And then we've got people, states across the country, including I think California, where they are either making it illegal to be unhoused, or they're making it so that you don't have access to the things you need to get out of that situation.
Yeah.
And then that just compounds the stereotype that, they want to be. Well, you know what? Maybe some people do. I'll give them that. There's always a bunch of, that's why we have laws. That's why murder is illegal, because, there's always going to be somebody who's going to murder someone.
Yeah.
But the majority of people who are unhoused are that way because they were forced out of their rental. And that was their Hail Mary. They were never going to own. Now they can't even afford to rent. And then we have the people who are miscategorized. They're kind of in the gray area. They don't have a rental, but they have been living in motels or hotels, renting by the week. And those numbers are not counted when we talk about the homeless.
Yeah. And I got to bring up the fact that recently, and we talked about it on the show, they did a study in Los Angeles where they gave homeless people like $750 a month. No questions asked. And